Different materials react to light in different ways, and being familiar with this means you're able to choose colors that make the materials in your art feel real and convincing. Some, like skin or leaves, can look a bit dead if not lit properly, but look lively and interesting when you don't treat all of your materials the same when it comes to lighting them. It's easy to dismiss stuff like this as something that's only important for painting, but that really isn't true. How light works should influence how you pick your flat colors as well, and so is useful for any artist to understand better. I want to focus most on subsurface scattering. This is probably most commonly known as the effect that happens when light shines through a person's skin, particularly ears or fingers, making it appear bright and red. What it is exactly, though, is what happens when light hits a translucent or semi-transparent material. Light is able to enter this material and brighten up the inside of it. It's called subsurface scattering because the light scatters around inside of the material. Skin is one of quite a few translucent materials that will react to light in this way. The effect is most visible when something is backlit. You are seeing the light pass through to the unlit side, where on something opaque it would be fully shadowed. The color will be brightest at the edges of the object, or more precisely, where it's thinner. It will also be quite saturated, something that is especially noticeable for skin, where the redness of the flesh is amplified. Here are some more real-world examples. This candle with the light of the fire only affecting the top plane isn't realistic, and that's because wax is a translucent material. The light will instead seep down into the wax, gradually fading as it gets further away from the source. Another inaccurately painted scenario is this fruit, which, depicted like this, looks as if it's all made of fully solid and dense material. Certain fruits, like lemon slices and grapes, are kind of fleshy in a similar way to human skin, and so light can go through them. There is a strong contrast between these and the fully shadowed fruits. Ice is another thing you can do this for, especially if you have a scene at night or in a cave. The ice can have a bluish glow. There's another kind of light that is similar to subsurface scattering, and that is transmitted light. This is when light passes directly through a thin material rather than scattering around inside. Leaves are generally considered to fall into this category, as well as stained glass windows, paper, and some clothing materials. Visually, the effect isn't much different from subsurface scattering, so with one exception I'll mention in a bit, I'd say you're welcome to mentally lump them together. Back to the candle example, the color as it goes down the candle isn't just the same hue getting darker. That would look like this. Pretty dull and uninteresting. Instead, what happens is it gets slightly redder the further the wax is from the flame. Adding to this, the saturation level as the colors get darker follows a curve, swinging right to become more saturated before going towards gray. This picture similarly has a very blue at the area dividing where light is coming through the fur and where it isn't. There will also be times, usually when the light source isn't as bright, where the lightest area of the subsurface scattering is the most saturated, such as in the spaces between my fingers in this picture. Subtlety is something I want to highlight more, because so often the examples of subsurface scattering that are given to explain it are only the most extreme. If the light source shining into the object is less bright, or in a more generally well-lit environment, the effect might not be so dramatic. Here's a picture in a well-lit room. There's a bit of redness in the shadow area of this hand, specifically on this side of the thumb and the fingertips, but it's very subtle compared to my previous hand example. Using this in your art in small ways really matters. It might not seem like the subsurface scattering here is doing much, but if you take that redness away, these hands look much more like they belong to a zombie than a living person. When thinking about where on your subject the light should be coming through, be sure to consider where the light might be being blocked by other objects. Any other objects between the light source and the object in question can prevent the light from reaching certain areas. Leaves are a great example of this, since leaves will block some sunlight from reaching other leaves. Because this is transmitted light, and so the light is passing directly through the leaf, this blocking of light will create relatively sharp shadow shapes. If light is being blocked from hitting an area on a thicker object, the dividing line isn't going to be as distinct because of the light scattering inside of the object. This little guy's head is still partially lit up even when the direct light is being blocked from that area, and that's because the light entering from lower down is bouncing around and getting up there. In most cases, you're probably better off choosing and adding these brighter, more saturated colors manually, but you may also want to try using blending modes for it. To do that, make a new layer clipping into the object, and paint in your light on that layer. There isn't one correct blending mode to use for this layer, but I find color dodge to be a good option. You can lower the intensity by using a darker color, or lowering the layer's opacity. intensity. If you want to watch more videos about lighting, you could try one of these next. Thanks for watching!